So Anne Jakes, I chair our Care for Creation committee here at Westminster. We're part of the Outreach Committee. We're quite new and really thinking through Earth Day. Hopefully some of you came last year to our Earth Day presentation out here with lots of different ways that you can reduce, reuse, recycle, and possibly refuse. So that's our new word this year. So you'll learn more in the next 2 weeks. So I'm going to say a very big thank you to Betsy Ballinger, Valentine, who she's got a new name, to Betsy, who's organised these 2 sessions for us to really learn more about how we care for God's creation. So thank you, Betsy.
Absolutely,
to introduce.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
I was really thrilled last year because I was on a Ann and I both were on a Zoom meeting, and we saw Roy virtually, and I was so impressed with what he had to say and the fact that he's local to us, as some of you well know. So I asked him, and he was so gracious as to come and be with us today and give us more insight into what we can do with our property here and what some of us can take home to our own properties, and continue to give the information out to more friends and family and enlighten them with some of what we learned. So this is not the first thing we've done as a committee. We've done quite a few things as a committee, and pay attention. We are all part of God's creation. Matthew 25, you've got a biblical reason for this, and I'm not going to read that. You can. And Anne has been swell to chair our committee or to chair this whole thing and come in and give us a prayer.
Okay, let's join our hearts in a time of prayer. Let me stand over here next to Roy.
Let me get out of the way.
Let's pray. Creator God, we are grateful for the gift of this day, for the beauty of your earth. Thank you that you call us to be good stewards of what you have created. And we're grateful for people like Roy who continue to inform us that we might make better choices in how we live on this planet. Help us to live gently and kindly and passionately for this creation that you have given to us. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
All yours.
We welcome Roy today, and you can read a little bit about his bio, and he can tell you a little bit about what he does. We're so thrilled to have him. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. What a great way to start the day, and thank you, Pat. It's inspiring. So, the presentation today is a 4-year series on care for creation. And one of the key points that I really want to talk a little bit about today is caring for sacred spaces and what that means. Here we are in a sacred space, right? So it's very relevant. I'll introduce myself, a little detail, a little background, talk about where I work, Kendall Crossings Communities, somewhat of a neighbor to this wonderful organization, and then get into policies and decision-making around, caring for communities, around ecological decisions and impact on environment, why that's important, and how we approach those decisions at Kendall Crossings. And then a little bit about taking action. And then I kind of want to veer off into a little bit of a tangent and talk about uncovering and preserving history, and an example of that we've been working on at Kendall Crossings for the last couple of years, and something that, when you get out into your environment, you start working and digging holes and looking at things, you uncover things that really become part of the treasure of the environment. So those are the things we'll be talking about today. And as I reach the end of the presentation, certainly any questions that you have, I'll be more than happy to answer, or at least try to answer. So let's go. So I'm Roy Mano. My official title is Romano Joseph Mano. I don't think anyone has ever called me that, including my parents, so I continue to scratch my head on why they named me Romano, because it does, as you recognize, rhyme Romano Mano. I heard a lot about that when I was a kid, and yep, so, but I smile about it now. I recently, and I thought this was relatively important, I recently graduated. Again, I scratched my head, because really at this point, from the Friends Services Alliance Leadership Fellowship program. And when I was invited to that, I literally said, why are they inviting me? kind of been around for a long time, and but it was a really awesome group, and it was a group of diverse individuals. And while I was the oldest person in the room, not by a whole lot, so that was kind of inspiring. And I thought back to a conversation I had with a CEO at one of the large Philadelphia hospitals that I was working at the time. I was working for a company called Sodexo, and I think I mentioned that a little further on. But it was at a point in my career where I was really at a crossroads. I was probably in my mid-50s trying to figure out, do I keep pushing and, try to get higher and further in Sodexo, or do I try to recognize, hey, I'm where I'm really happy. Do I stay here or do I move? And she gave me some really great advice, and she didn't tell me what to do, but, she just sort of said, as long as you're learning, keep going. So this opportunity to do the fellowship was really very, very welcoming, and really gave me greater understanding of how Quaker organizations really operate. So it was fundamentally very important, very eye-opening, and, quite honestly too, a little bit life-changing, because when you learn new things, especially about your beliefs, it really can be impactful. So I worked with 37 years in facilities management, which means that I don't really specialize in anything at this point, but with the exposure and the responsibility I've had for so many different things over the years, I do honestly feel like I have a level of expertise that it's enough to kind of get me in trouble when we get involved in these different things. And, landscaping and grounds maintenance, and caring for the environment, because it really kind of evolves that way. It starts out, it's landscaping, let's make it beautiful, let's add flowers and stuff. And then it becomes more of managing that process. And then it becomes, hey, wait a minute, we're impacting the environment here. And what does that mean? And how do we do that properly and effectively? I've worked in several different organizations. I've been at Kendall Crosslands Communities for just over 3 years now, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I've worked in healthcare, hospitals and nursing homes, large pharmaceutical companies, education, and commercial properties. I spent 27 years in hospitals and nursing homes doing contracted services, primarily through Sodexo. And some of that involved, believe it or not, taking care of the landscaping at large New York City hospitals, which basically we're really talking about, some sidewalk areas with some plantings, right through to, I think my probably really proudest one up until currently was AI DuPont Children's Hospital and their estate. It's a beautiful place if you've never been there. The hospital is amazing, the care that they provide to children. And of course, the AI DuPont estate, which we were responsible for. Really, really beautiful grounds, lovely, and they do a lot ecologically and environmentally. So where am I from? Can any of you guess? I know some of you know because I work with some of you, but any ideas? New York. Yeah, you're right. And if I told you I was a Yankee fan, would you know which borough I'm from? It's funny. I had to ask that question because I really feel like I've done a good job over the years of hiding my accent. Yeah, I guess not. If you spoke to my wife, forget about it. She really gives away the New Yorker. So yes, I am married, coming up on 40 years in October, and we have 4 children, 4 grown children, and we now have 3 grandchildren, which is pretty amazing, and 2 of them are under 6 months old. So that's that's a whole different experience. And I do like to have fun. Hopefully, we'll have a little fun here today. I'm a runner and avid reader, and I really like 1950s science fiction movies. But unfortunately, there's 13 of us now in the immediate, if you will, family, and apparently I'm the only one that likes 1950s. So, Friday nights around midnight, that's in front of the TV by myself. But maybe one of the grandkids will jump on board with that. So Kendall Crosslands Communities. We are a continuing care retirement community. We have 4 communities, 2 very large and 2 smaller that are over 50 communities. They're Kendall at Longwood, Crosslands, Cartmel, and Coniston. We have over 900 residents living in our communities. We have about 350 employees. taking care of everything. 250 square feet of occupied space. Some of that, and if you look at the picture up here on the right, actually on the left, you can see our community and health centers. And that's where we house on each side, Kendall and Crossroads, about 120 nursing home and assisted living residents. And then as you look and you see this little row of zigzag buildings, those are our cottages. We also have on the Crosslands campus, 7 two-story apartment buildings. So really a variety of home assets that our residents live in. We are on 500 acres, and 80 of those acres are what we call big woods. And there's a lot of passion and a lot of money and a lot of effort that's going into sustaining and improving and revitalizing those big woods. And I'll talk a little bit about that. We also have 14 trails. They tell me it's 11 miles of trails. And it probably is, but I haven't actually measured that. So I'm not sure it's quite that lengthy. Could be a little bit more though. 276 natural areas around the communities. We are an accredited arboretum. So there again, our residents do a tremendous job of supporting that effort and participating in that effort. I do have on my staff, our ground supervisor is certified. We have a horticulturalist and an arborist as well that are all certified and licensed for different practices to support the arboretum. So they're the experts. They're the ones that really, when we run into the technical issues, I fully rely on them, and they keep me informed of the different things that we need to do as we continue to move forward. And it really is a collective effort. And when it comes to looking outside and being outside and taking care of outside, it really is everyone. It's not one person, it's not one department, it's not one group. It really involves everyone to make the best decisions, and communication around that is key. So when it comes to that process, one of the key things is having committees, because you need people involved that are going to drive the process. Not everyone has to be on a committee, but those committees are great resources to getting everything organized and keeping communications open and keeping people involved and getting funding and important things like that taken care of. So we have, as you can see, numerous committees related to our out of doors areas. We have when we say for community or 4C, it relates to the 4 communities participating on a particular committee. We have a Nature Conservancy Committee. We have a Horticultural Committee, an Arboretum Committee, a Trails Committee, a Hydroponics Committee, and also a Recycling Committee. And a lot of the work the Recycling Committee does is actually consulting with some of these other committees and directly with the Facilities Group on some of the products and services that we use throughout our community and especially in our big woods. So greening sacred spaces. When you think about this, it really provides the opportunity to realize that, all religious traditions and even traditions that sometimes we don't necessarily consider religious beliefs, but when it's a group of people gathered together trying to understand the greater world around them, there's often a desire to care for the environment, the world around us. And, it's so important. It's God's creation. Of course, here, I think we all probably, have that strong Christian faith. But there's whether you believe, directly in an ultimate being, or you believe in nature, or whatever it is, there's always that inherent belief of taking care of the world around us. We're living at a time when it's imperative for everyone to work toward helping the environment. And I meant to probably try to make a little bit of a joke when I saw the handout, because, it is, and this is not a joke, but it is a time of climate crisis and disasters of a biblical scale. And you have to laugh sometimes at what's going on. And in the past week, we had a direct lightning strike on our campus at Kendall at Longwood. And thankfully, it happened about 4:15 p.m. and it was a very rainy day, a few days of rain, but it did strike a tree and it blew 3 holes in the ground, and it tore up a little part of our, one of our main walkways. So it was a really devastating strike. Now, in addition to that, it caused, right now, we're up to about $90,000 in damage. And fortunately, in a way, it's infrastructure damage. So it's like electrical systems and things like that. And it actually didn't directly impact our residents or our staff, which was wonderful. So facilities and our subcontractors are doing a lot of behind the scenes work. But then, you know, of course, we were joking, oh my goodness, you know, we had a lightning strike and the next day we had an earthquake. And, you know, and it was fine, you know, you guys probably experienced it. There was a little bit of a vibration and, you know, I was not my first earthquake. Thank God the first one was the same thing, just a little vibration. But, and I think, you know, the people in California are laughing at us, you know, that's not an earthquake. But myself and my ground supervisor and my boss and a couple of residents were out in one of the areas and we're looking through a valley, kind of making some determinations on what steps we needed to take, if any, to revitalize this particular valley where there's a lot of stormwater runoff on our Crosslands campus. And there was one section, probably 10 feet by 4 feet, where a gully was being created. And we happened to be standing right on the edge of the gully looking in when the earthquake struck. Amazingly, we didn't even know it. But, you know, we're standing on the edge of the gully, and it was only, you know, a couple of feet deep, but Casey, my ground supervisor, was really kind of stepping on the muddy edge. And I'm thinking, Casey, you're going to fall in. You know, even though you know what you're doing, you're going to fall. So we get back to the office. I literally walk into my office. I wasn't even seated yet. My phone rang. It was my boss. And I answered. I said, hey, what's up? And he said, send out a single wire. That's our emergency phone messaging system. He said, send out a single wire about the earthquake. I thought he was kidding. What are you talking about? Because there was just an earthquake. I was like, what? He said, yeah, check online, send out a message. So, and of course, Monday we're having an eclipse. So a lot of biblical stuff going on. But anyway, back to our topic. So yeah, our and all space is sacred. I mean, really, they really are. And we are a Quaker affiliated organization. So we really believe strongly and we try to operate and function and take care of ourselves based on Quaker values. And their simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality, and stewardship. And stewardship is what Quakers believe is part of our responsibility to take care of the environment. So that's a big part of what we do. So the World Economic Forum Global Risks Report ranks biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse as one of the top 5 threats humanity will face in the next 10 years. Now, whether it's the World Economic Forum, the EPA, the local college, university professors, there's a whole bunch of resources that are saying this. You know, if we don't fix these problems, the problems are just going to get worse. So if, you know, there's the religious belief around it, there's the factual belief of science, and there's the common sense belief. You know, if you look hard enough, you're going to see it, you're going to feel it, you're going to experience it. You know, how many red alert days did we have last summer where the air quality, the outside air quality was such that it was a threat to people's health, right? So it's you know, you can't deny it anymore. People will, but you can't. So policy development, there's some steps that we need to go through when developing a policy. And, you know, I'd like you to really think about this. It's not only, you know, if you're thinking about participating in the organization here or an organization somewhere else, even if it's just at home, not that you need to write a policy for your home, but it's kind of the thought process to organize your thoughts because, and I'll use a perfect example, you know, my wife and I, she would say, you know, we need to plant some plants and because she's, you know, in charge of all that, she's pretty much in charge of everything. And, you know, I say, okay. And, you know, after many years of getting involved in this, you start to realize that it's really much more than that. And that's what we're going to touch upon. So, you know, one-on-one, let's have a conversation about it. Let's talk about it. What do we really want to do? What do we really want to accomplish? And what impact is that going to have on our environment? And when you talk about environment, and a lot of the focus, rightfully so, especially in this overview discussion that we're having, is about, you know, the natural fauna and flora. but it goes beyond that. And what we learned is as we take care of that, we start to see something new going on in our backyards. We start to see the wildlife return, the variety, and it's really amazing. And it's everything literally from insects, which sometimes we say, oh my gosh, we don't want insects. But, somebody was just telling me earlier about the dragonflies, the lightning bugs, sorry, that showed up on her property when she started making a change in the chemicals that were being used. And she noticed that, she experienced it, and that's amazing. Right up to, like foxes and birds. I mean, a lot of people love birds. I grew up in the Bronx, and the last home that we lived in, the prior resident did a lot of native related gardening in her backyard. She was way ahead of her time. And we had a variety of birds. We had cardinals, we had red robins, we had blue jays, we had garter snakes. And funny story, my oldest son, who was 2 years old at the time, never put anything in his mouth. We never worried about this child choking. And we had a small backyard. One day we were out in the backyard, and I happened to look at him, and he was munching on something. I went over, I said, what do you have in your mouth? He had a garden snail in his mouth, shell and all. But we got through that. He was fine. I wasn't. But when you take care of your environment, that's what happens. And that's the kind of thing that, we're trying to see, and we are seeing and experiencing at Kendall Crosslands Communities. And that's why these things are so important, because you can make it happen. And it's not really hard. So you want to determine, you want to identify the need. You want to determine who are the stakeholders. It's not just the organization. It's not just the people who run the organization. It's the people, the visitors, the members of the church. It's the people that work at the church. It's the people that live in the greater community. Who is going to be impacted by this? And then you could really, and I was thinking about this last night, I was kind of preparing for this, it's the wildlife too. It's the flora, the fauna, the animals, it's all part of their world too. So you can really stretch that along. You want to gather the pertinent information. If you don't know, that's fine. There's so many resources, get educated on it. Do a little bit of research, talk to others. People love to talk about this stuff. Gardening, tree life, wildlife, etc. There's so many resources. And then develop the policy or the guideline or the program or even the discussion at the dinner table, whatever it might be. Gather all your information. So in identifying the need, why do we need this policy? Why do we need this guideline? Is it relevant? Is it going to be important? Does it help us achieve a goal? And that goal could be as simple as we just want to enjoy the backyard, or we want to beautify the front of our church. We want to make it attractive and welcoming. What are the goals? Is there something specific that you want to accomplish? I'm not sure what I meant by conforming to requirements, but if I kind of push the point a little bit, there could be organizational requirements. There could be membership, people on the member team that feel differently than what the original goal might be. And then informing others, especially in a community, whether it's large or small, you want to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on, what the conversations are. Of course, things start with an idea. An idea becomes, from one person, it spreads to 2 and 3 and 4. And then, a group feels like they're empowered to do something, and they probably are, but nobody knows yet. So get the word out. Get the word out early, because people want to have a say in what's going on, and people want to be informed. They may not disrupt the process. Sure, there may be some naysayers, and there may be somebody or some people that feel differently about what the idea is, but that just helps create a better process and a better outcome for everybody. So we talked a little bit about stakeholders. At Kendall Crosslands, for example, it's our staff, our residents. We often have students and interns. It's the members of the community members of different organizations that get involved there. It's our visitors. It's really everyone. You know, we're a very open community. We're very inviting. We invite the public in. You can literally walk right on or drive right into our community. You could bicycle in and explore and enjoy the surroundings. So we have to take all those groups into account when we do these things. And are some more important than others? Sure. And you prioritize and you work through that. So the pertinent information, if you're going to write a policy, and it could be really just a statement of, hey, here's what we want to do. Or it could be, if you're an organization, you might need a formal written policy approved by the head of the organization and maybe even a committee or a board of directors, etc. So you need the content to write the policy. You need somebody who's actually going to write the policy, and you need policy approval. And by that, what I mean is not just, somebody wrote it, somebody else signs off on it. Again, it's the community, it's the stakeholders, put it out for advisement, give people an opportunity to read it and say, hey, you know what, I question this. Or, sometimes like, this is a great idea, what a wonderful thing everyone is working on. Again, it will have the goals, make sure you have the goals. Key definitions are really important, especially when you start talking about details that while your work group might be very familiar with, you always have to think about, the third party. Well, they know what I'm talking about when I talk about invasive species. What does that mean? Aliens? So keep it simple, but define the information so everybody understands. Lay out the procedure. Again, if it's pertinent, there might be steps that need to be followed in this policy. Brief, clear, understandable, and simple. And then any other relevant information. There might be resources that you used. The Department of Environmental Protection put out a notice, and it was important information. You spoke to the local store that provides, grounds and landscaping equipment. You spoke to their horticulturalist, and she provided really good information that you want to make as a reference in your document. Anything that's important, put it in there, or put a list of references like a bibliography where people can go to learn more. So, ecological and stewardship policies. Talked a little bit about the details. What does it look like? So we'll have our overview, our scope, our specific procedures, different types of plantings, chemical use or not use, water use, and equipment. On a smaller scale, for garden spaces, again, you might have personal garden spaces. Now at Kendall Crosslands, and I'll talk a little bit about it later, but just to give you an idea, each cottage or apartment has a private garden space, which the residents can develop and utilize and enjoy. We also have common landscaped areas, which again are there for everyone to enjoy, and they can even participate in the care and development of those spaces. And then we have designated garden areas that are more public gardens for our residents, where they can have vegetable gardens or plant their flowers or perennials or annuals that they want to utilize in their garden spaces or elsewhere. Again, chemical use decisions on small scale and large scale, water use and equipment, same thing. So I think this is, and this one's actually from Europe, but this is a worldwide consideration that we need to be aware of. Every year, hundreds of tons of toxic pesticides are used in the streets, parks, schools, and open spaces of our towns and cities. It doesn't have to be this way. And out in the countryside as well. And even though this one's from the UK, isn't it relevant? Every day we often see in the ground, those little yellow flags or green flags that say pesticide in use or chemical in use. And it's there because it's hazardous, because it's dangerous, not only to people, but to pets, and other wildlife. So that's why it's there, and that's why it's important. So we want to commit to a do no harm policy by establishing standards for ecologically minded landscaping decisions. So do no harm, before you reach for that bag of fertilizer or read the label, learn about it. Do you really need it? Is watering your lawn enough? So think about it. So the overview, a narrative statement, speaks to the why and how, identifies the benefits of the policy, defines the goals and desired outcomes. Here's an example of a policy that we have at Kendall Crosslands, and it's a personal gardens and landscaped common areas. So it starts out with, our communities provide for use and enjoyment of personal gardens for our residents, et cetera, et cetera. So we lay out what the overview, what the idea, what the reason is for the policy. And I think I cut it off there a little bit, but you get the gist. The scope, specific details, list the areas and items that will be covered by the policy. Who is responsible for what actions? Who is responsible for what actions? Yeah, we put this stuff down on paper and we file it and off we go, and then nothing happens. How will the work be accomplished? And what are the measurable outcomes? That's more for the organization. As organizations, we want to know that the work we're doing is being monitored and tracked, and something happened, whether it was good or bad. After we implemented this program, there was an outcome. And what was that outcome, and what can we learn from it? Because both the positive and the negative, we want to do better the next time around. And here's an example of, again, from the policy. Residents are responsible for the care and cost of their personal gardens. So we set them up when you move in as a new resident. We get it all set up for you, and then you take it from there. Here's another one related to it. This is more specifically about those personal gardens. The other one breaks out in the policy, the personal gardens and the common areas. And then the scope. Specific details, list the areas and items that will be covered by the policy. Who is responsible for what actions? Am I going over the same thing? Sorry about that. There we go. I hit the wrong button. Thought that sounded familiar. As I said, I'm not as young as I used to be. So non-native versus invasives, two different things. The non-native are non-native species that have moved to our areas by people. Bamboo. Somebody brought bamboo to the Northeast. It's not natural, and it didn't invade from somewhere else. Invasive species again are moved in by people, but they're harmful to humans and the environment. Now, anything that, whether it's non-native or invasive, can be harmful, or probably is harmful to the local environment. So there's, it's a little bit of a technical definition, but it's important to understand. And using native plants and species in the area, wherever it is so vitally important, because that was God's design. This is what's supposed to be here. And we do know, and this is where it does get a little tricky. We do know that, nature changes over time. And, that's God's will. Things change, people change, etc. People have choice. So where do you draw the line philosophically between what's naturally changing in the environment and what we are forcing to change in the environment? So that's the quandary that we often get into when we start talking about bigger projects related to the environment. And again, we're going to talk about our big woods, and I'll give you some examples of that. So what's in, what's out? We really want to exclude invasives. If they're there, we want to remove them so the natural plant and fauna can grow. We want to prioritize the native plants. And we want to follow the guidance of horticulturalists or other professional resources. Gardening at the base level is it's kind of like cooking or cleaning. And if you've ever run or been responsible for any of those services, everyone, rightfully so, is an expert, right? Because we all sometimes cook for ourselves, or we all clean our homes. So we think that professional person who's behind the counter or is running the vacuum, they should do it the way we want them to do it, because we're experts in that. But there's a reason why, typically, if they're trained appropriately, they know what they're doing. So be careful when you're talking to, the garden experts, because they may not really understand at a scientific level what's going on in your garden or in the area. That's why you really want to resource, the local people that are horticulturalists, experts in the area, arborists, and very easy to find. Again, if you go to the local landscape store, they're all over the place. Talk to the different people in there. Find out who their best person is. They'll be a wonderful resource, and they'll give you good guidance. And that's not to say that your neighbor next door doesn't really know what he or she is talking about, but just like with anything else, seek out good advice. And then use your own judgment. You decide what's best. So chemical use, do no harm. Prohibit pesticide and herbicide use. Require contractors to respect these guidelines. Don't take okay, yeah, we know. No, what do you know? Explain it to me. What are you going to do? What's your process? What are you using? I need to see the chemical sheets. They're called safety data sheets, which will give you a lot of information on what's really in that chemical. And then you can do some research. Prohibit, if you can, chemical fertilizers. Sometimes this stuff is needed. Something you got to use it sometimes. But there might be one that's a lot less harmful than another. And of course, there might be organic opportunities to do these things. Focus on prevention and organic landscaping management. There's a lot of different organizations out there that do different types of certifications. I borrowed a couple from previous presentation that I had done. Certified wildlife habitat, and a wildlife habitat gets certified because of the increased development, rejuvenation of native plants, because the native plants create the environment for the native wildlife. Bird-friendly habitat, again, the same type of thing. If there's things there for the birds to eat, they will come and they will live there. A homegrown national park. This is an organization that will certify your backyard garden.
And I'm making a commercial because the next guy is gonna be talking on that Homegrown National Park.
Next week.
Next week, okay, sorry.
There you go, that's okay, stay tuned, come back. Okay, move away from, fossil fuels. Again, I borrowed this slide and I was talking to one of my kids and he said, Dad, you need to verify that, because it's really, but the idea being that, an hour of lawnmower use allegedly is equal to driving 300 miles in a car. Small engines, there's nothing about those engines that are environmentally friendly. I mean, that's a fact. The gas goes in and the fumes come out. Your automobile, whether it's just a gas-driven car or a fully electric vehicle, what am I trying to say? Stay away from the fully electric. If it's gas or hybrid, it's going to emit excessive fumes, right? But nowhere near at the level that a small engine would. So if you can, use battery or electric powered equipment. And, if you kind of pay attention a little bit, even just to TV commercials, last year there weren't a lot of products out there, mowers, weed whackers, blowers. Now there are. And I think the real difference is they're a lot better now. You can get more power from the tool and you can get more time of usage per battery charge, which is really, really important because the batteries are very expensive. And I'll go off on a little bit of a tangent. Don't buy, yes, I did. Don't buy the knockoff batteries because they won't work in your equipment. So I have Ego electric equipment at my home, and the first go round for my snow blower, for my leaf blower, I bought a knockoff battery because it was cheaper and it doesn't work right. The blower will blow for about 30 seconds and turn off, and then I have to hit the button again, and it's annoying. But don't buy the cheap batteries. Buy the equipment appropriate for equipment. That will get better over time, and the batteries are extremely expensive. Enough said. So yeah, if you can move to battery, electric, or battery operated equipment, it's a really good thing to do for the environment. It's a little bit more challenging. Actually, I'm going to be honest. It's a lot more challenging on a large scale. A commercial operation, an operation taking care of the grounds like you have here. It's a lot harder to do that. The reason being is a couple of things. It's not the power of the equipment now. I think they've pretty much resolved that with the battery packs. It's the length of time that the battery stays viable while you're doing the work. So sure, gas runs out of a gas tank, right? You're in the middle of mowing, your gas tank runs out, you got to stop and fill up again. So there's downtime. Same thing with a battery. And sometimes it's easier. You can carry the extra battery pack, swap in, swap one, swap out. The problem is charging the batteries. You have to have multiple charging stations for multiple batteries for one piece of equipment. And so location and electrical capacity are two of the challenges that go along with that. And when you're charging that many batteries, there's also safety issues that you have to be aware of. Lithium batteries, while safe, can be extremely hazardous, not only while they're being charged, but not necessarily while they're being used, but while they're being charged and especially when they're being stored. So there's a lot of considerations. And then disposal is another big issue. So there's issues there that have to be worked out, but definitely better than using gas-powered equipment. So at Kendall Crosslands Communities, our decision-making process regarding all these types of policies and procedures kind of runs like this. Whenever the idea percolates, whether it comes from our residents or it comes from staff or it comes from outside the community, we kind of walk it through our decision process. And this is on the, our residents do this as well. They take these considerations in. But from a formal standpoint, when it comes to my desk and facilities, this is what we start talking about and looking at. Check the boxes. Is it ecologically or environmentally responsible? Will it do no harm? Will it protect native species? And will it enhance resident life? Now, there's probably others, but those are the key things that we look at. We want to meet all those four critical points. And then as we go from idea to implementation, when, for example, a resident or two might come to me with a specific idea, we'd like to put a deer fence around a section of the woods, for example. The first thing I say is, I don't judge, good idea, bad idea. I say, what committee or which committee is sponsoring this idea? Because we don't want to operate from a standpoint of an individual trying to, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but an individual having a direct impact on decisions that should be for the community and not for the individual. Hopefully I said that the right way, because it's really only a positive aspect, honestly. So I always say, which committee is sponsoring you? Because if the idea is really going to take off, it's got to have the support of the residents. And then we get the support of administration. So what committee? And by the way, we have about 140 committees, resident committees at Kendall Crosslands. So it's that vibrant and that involved. Then we have listening sessions. So the idea, the committee gets together, starts talking about it, working out a general plan. Then we put it out to everybody. Sometimes that's as simple as, putting it in the bulletin, sharing it at other committee meetings, letting the, we have resident boards, so letting the Kendall Resident Association Board know about what the idea is and where we're going with it, or the Crosslands Board or the other two community boards, and they get the word out. And sometimes we'll have meetings just like this, where we'll present on the idea, hey, here's an idea, we're trying to figure out how to revitalize the big woods. Do we plant trees with protection, or do we do a big woods, a deer fence in the big woods? So we put it out to the whole community, and then the process goes round and round with the discussions. Oftentimes, there's subcommittees. If it's a really big project like this deer fence I keep referencing, there were subcommittees working through how does that look, how does it work, where do we fund it, etc. There's a report out, so everybody stays informed. And once the policy is completed and agreed, then it's inform and educate. Everybody needs to know we have a new policy or program. Everybody needs to be educated on it so they can understand it. And people also need to know where they can find that information if they need it for future reference. So some of the policies and sustainability initiatives we've had at Kendall Crosslands in the last couple of years related to our environment. With the residents, we do modifications and additions to their outdoor space. We do community gardens. patio garden areas. We have, I mentioned trails. We also have extensive pathways. And I'll talk a little bit later about pervious surfaces. We have covered walkways, landscape common areas. We even have a no whimsy policy, which is a great word, because we don't want to, overpopulate the environment with a variety of unnatural decorative things. So in your personal garden space.
Yard art.
There you go, yard art.
No.
You can, you can have an elf or a frog or whatever it is, but out in the common spaces throughout the community, we kind of frown upon that. And then for the community, of course, we have snow removal, which is, this past year was rather significant, and stormwater management, which is a huge challenge for us across our communities. And as the area continues to get built up, will continue to be a challenge. Wastewater management, we actually have our own wastewater treatment plant. And we take in daily we have 100,000 gallon storage tank. So Chester County provides our water, it feeds that storage tank, and each day we use literally daily 80,000 gallons of that water to provide water to 3 of our communities, Kendall, Longwood, Crosslands, and Cartmel, and our smaller community, Coniston, which is 9 duplex homes, 18 families, if you will, over in about 1.5 miles down the road. I'm from up north, so I'm still not geographically very knowledgeable of the area. I know how to get to work and I know how to get home, and that works. I know how to get here too, because I drive past here just about every day. This was an easy one. Pest management and recycling grounds waste, all big projects that we work on. Pretty much these are routine stuff. But then recently we've been getting more involved in energy purchasing. So trying to purchase more clean energy for our electrical consumption in particular. We're trying to get away from, we have minimal natural gas usage, and we continue to try to get away from that. And one of the amazingly wonderful things about Kendall Crosslands communities is a lot of our staff have been there for, my administrative assistant in facilities, for example, is celebrating 50 years of employment at Kendall. And she's going strong. She's awesome. And, the institutional knowledge that you get from that is priceless, absolutely priceless. Our construction manager's been there 37 years. Anytime I need to know where a pipe is in the ground, he was pretty much there when they built it. Joe, where's, it's over there, Roy. Thank you. We're scratching the surface now with solar. We have some solar panels on a small scale, feeding energy to a couple of carports at our Crosslands community, part of our new construction over there. But the new apartment building that we built there is fully infrastructured for solar panels. So at some point we'll be able to add that. We're doing another carport on the Kendall side, an original carport that we're putting in solar panels. And that one was actually funded by one of our residents. We're very fortunate that our residents often donate to a lot of the different charitable funds that we have at Kendall Crosslands, and it really helps reinvigorate the community. We have geothermal heating at one section of our Kendall community. I mentioned the wastewater treatment plant. We have a hydroponics farm. It's on a very small scale, but directly driven by our residents. They wanted to learn about hydroponics. We were able to offer them space. We rebuilt a room in the community center at Kendall. They figured out all the equipment that they needed. Our culinary services department, in partnership with this group of residents on the hydroponics committee, in conjunction with facilities, we outfitted it for them, and they started growing. And they grow mostly leaf vegetables that are used in our kitchens. So it's wonderful. It is very small scale. And they are really hoping someday to have a larger, kind of like a room this size, where they can really grow and produce a lot of product. So we're hoping that can come through.
Do you guys have the ground for like windmills and stuff like that? There would be more.
We have room for solar fields. We could do windmills. We are on 500 acres. And part of the balance so we can do stuff like that. we haven't done it yet, but part of the balance is, where do you put it and what do you take away in putting it? So, and that's where our committees and our discussions come in. And pickleball is a great example. We put in which I never heard of until 2 years ago. But we put in a pickleball court at our Crosslands community, and it was pretty easy because we had enough locations around the cottages to choose a spot where it wasn't going to impact anyone as far as noise, etc. On the Kendall side, it's a little bit more, I don't want to say congested, but the layout of the cottages and the common areas is such that we're really restricted on putting something like that too close to where our residents are living. So we went through numerous locations and this whole process with the meetings and the subcommittees, and we're still a year and a half out. We finally found a location, but now and it's kind of out of the way, but we're working with the DEP because of the stormwater management implications. And it's going to cost a lot more money than, a typical pickleball court is about $40,000. So we're going to be way over that budgeted amount. So we're pushing back into 2025, but it's a great amenity and our residents love it. And I do have to brag and say that I am my team won the 2023 Staff Pickleball League Championship undefeated. So thank you very much. I share that because, I never won anything athletically. So I come home and my wife says, take the medal off. Too bad, huh? Yes, sir.
And the Westminster Dinkers take you on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're ready. As I say that, my knee hurts. The Big Woods preservation and revitalization. I mentioned and I might be getting ahead of the slide, but let me talk about it here because I want to speed up a little bit. We have 80 acres, which is a wooded area, and it spans Kendall and Crosslands. And, beauty is in the eye of the beholders because someone like myself, and I do have a different paradigm now, but, when I first got there 3 years ago, I said, wow, this is awesome. We have 80 acres. And I had one of the residents take me on a walking tour throughout the woods. And there was a lot of beauty, but there was also a lot of erosion and damage. There's one section where we have a long gully about 5 feet deep and a number of massive trees that just came down. And it literally almost looks like a war zone, this one strip of big woods. And it's helped create a very vibrant action on the part of our residents. 20 years ago, we did a study, Kendall Crosslands did a study of the big woods and the impact that erosion and invasives and other things were having on the big woods. And over the next 20 years, work was done to start to return it or revitalize it, but the work wasn't enough. And what ended up happening is we're at a point now where we have large canopy gaps. So it became, how do we deal with this? And the number one, stormwater management and deer population, we found were the two critical things that were impacting our big woods. There was literally a year of conversation with multiple groups, multiple stakeholders, and people extremely passionate about how to deal with the influx of the deer and the deer herd. And everything from, they're God's creatures, right? To if we do something about the deer, they're going to literally go next door and impact our neighbors. So the whole spectrum of consideration, and things that quite frankly, I'm not thinking about. I'm thinking about, as the manager, I'm thinking about safety and I'm thinking about how to fix the problem. The problem is the deer. And we do have an organized deer hunt. Every year we have a hunt master, and he organizes a group of licensed hunters and they go through the woods. And it's a very long deer hunting season, but they cull the herd. And it's important. And, sometimes we need to help nature. So we do that and it does help. But the decision became, instead of just planting trees with tree tubes, we did decide to do a deer fence. Longwood Gardens is our neighbor. So we spent a lot of time with them talking about looking at their deer fence project and how successful that's been. So we put in a deer fence surrounding or enclosing 42 acres of the 80-acre Big Woods. It literally just finished. We just finished the project. It was over $100,000, and money came from directly from Kendall, in part from direct resident contributions, and also we have some different funds that, again, we're very fortunate as an organization because a lot of our residents will leave money to the organization for different things that are important to them. And our sustainability fund is funded by contributions from our residents. So a portion of that Big Woods deer fence was funded by that. It wasn't an easy decision to do the Big Woods fence because half of our stakeholders were not in favor of it. A lot of them, quite frankly, opposed to it. But that was the ultimate decision that was made. And as a result of that, we are starting to see, and literally the fence just got done, but we're moving into spring. So, the foliage is starting to respond. Our horticulturalists report very positive initial impacts, and we're planning on planting 1,000 trees this year, which is, and seedlings, they'll be small, but they'll be protected. So that really is awesome. That's really an amazing thing and it's just one of many things that we're doing. But again, it speaks to the process and the communication and caring for God's creation. Some of the other things that we're doing, we're supporting native flora and fauna. We have Bennett's Run, which is a stream that runs right through our property. So a lot of our stormwater dumps into that stream. And I did mention I started talking about the wastewater treatment plant. We're going to be rebuilding it. The plan is in the next 5 years because currently it's an open pond system. And so the sewage goes into one pond, then it gets filtered, it goes into another pond, it gets cleaned, then it goes into the third pond where it essentially is returned to potable water. But the structure was built in 1972, so it's not drinking water, but it's clean water. And it does have a small amount of chlorine in it. And then we spray it out into 22 acres in our Big Woods. And those spray fields are part of what has been creating erosion in the big fields. But back in 1972, that was state cutting edge technology that was used. So we're working toward improving all that. We use a lot of pervious pavement, and it's amazing. You can really see the difference when you look at a paved area and a walking path that we put in next to it. You can actually see in the rain the water going down through the pervious surface. So that really does work. We have bioswales, which are natural areas that we've created with water absorbing plants. So there's a lot more water that gets absorbed or stays in that area. Plus it supports nature's environment, wildlife, etc. Nature-focused groundskeeping using leaf mulch and wood chips. We do unfortunately still use a lot of commercial grade mulch, and there's a lot of different things in that, but we're trying to get more and more of our own mulch that we can use throughout our areas. Environmentally, this is a really important one, environmentally friendly turf management. The right product at the right time and the right amount. When we're putting down fertilizer, and I mean at home, we open up the thing and we run up and down and we want to cover all the grass and so on. But we do it very scientifically at Kendall Crossings. We make sure that if we are using chemicals, we're using the right amount, the safe amount, and as little as we possibly can. We're also working on transitioning from turf to meadow. Everybody loves a beautifully cut lawn, but a beautifully cut lawn doesn't really do anything for the environment. It looks pretty, and they are pretty, and they're wonderful, and we run on them and we play on them and all that good stuff, and that's tremendous value in that. But can we cut back on that and create more meadows, which are just as beautiful and just as enticing and so on? So that's what we're trying to do.
Can you enlarge? How did you do that?
It's actually not as simple as it sounds. It's really very complicated because you have to have the right mix of native plants going in. You have to clear the soil, treat it, get it ready, plant it, manage it. And I didn't know this. And when I first got there that first season, they cut down one of the main meadows. And I went back to, I said, Casey, I think they mowed the meadow by mistake. And he said, no, we're supposed to do that. It will grow. And sure enough, it regrows. But I thought, my goodness. So there's really a lot to it. And that's where the difference is between me that knows enough to get myself in trouble. I can't tell you how to do it, but someone like, my ground supervisor and my team, they're the experts. They can really share details on how to make it work. And biorational pest management program, again, with the lightest touch possible. And that really where we're looking at there, like we have ash trees in our big woods that are being eaten by, certain pests. And that's where we need to use chemicals, so we try not to use them just for, general pest control. Okay, here's where I'd like to take just a few more minutes and go off on a little bit of a tangent. So as I said, when you get out there and you start looking around, you might find something, a few stones in the ground, or maybe even, and it's a little hard to see in this picture, but when I first got there, I was in my office, and I'll digress for a moment, bear with me. I actually graduated from college with a degree in physical anthropology and biology because I was going to be a forensic anthropologist before anybody ever heard of that. But that's a story for another day. So off to graduate school, married, had a baby. Go do something else. So here I am, and no regrets. But I'm sitting I was there. It was February. I started January. It's February, and out in the hall, a couple of my guys are talking and yada yada the ruin. Yada yada the ruin. I get up and I said, wait a minute. I got my New York on now. But what are you talking about? The ruin? What is this, Egypt? So they said, no, there's a stone farmhouse ruin from like 1700. I was like, you're kidding, where? And they're like, just down the hill from where the maintenance office is. I got very excited. I literally went outside, ran across the meadow, which was covered in snow, down the hill, and there it was. And I immediately became fascinated. And this is the stone farmhouse ruin that was built by Ezekiel Harlan in 1700.
Where is that?
And it's on the Kendall at Longwood campus. It's off the promenade. And here's our community map, or at least a portion of it, for Kendall at Longwood. And this is somewhat facing southward, where you look up where it says Kendall, if I have my directions correct in my mind. But the maintenance office is right here. And this is the road that goes over the hill into Crosslands. And so I'm in here and I ran across here and ran down the hill, and that's where the ruins were. And there's a pond there that was man-made in 1952. So the pond very much came well after the ruin. But as a result of finding that, and I won't go through all these slides, but I did want to talk about the fact that, originally the first people that were here were the Lenape, and, we should always be respectful of that idea. But William Penn, you guys know the history, came to Pennsylvania, got a land grant, yada, yada, and he knew Ezekiel, and Ezekiel got a farm out of it, built the farmhouse, gave it to his son. They raised a family there, then another family. And in 1972, we built Kendall Crosslands Communities. This is a drawing from 1951 of what that person felt like the farmhouse looked like. And of course, the Harlan family were Quakers. And we do have the Quakers Friend meeting right off Route 1 South on our Kendall property, which was built, I think, in 1731. And the Harlans were members of that Friends group. This is who we were. And a note on safety first. So I went back with one of the committees, the Nature Conservancy Committee, and while we were standing there and they were filling me in on it, a group of residents from our hiking committee came by and they all started looking in and jumping. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, time out, this thing could fall on you. So from that, we started discussions. We had it stabilized. We had a structural engineer come in, assess it. It needed to be stabilized. We did that. We repointed the whole structure. And we have a plan now, which we're building this year, an overlook for our residents, which will be a destination for them to come to, whether they're in a wheelchair or other device, or they can freely walk. There'll be like a patio area. We're going to rebuild an ox shed that was part of the original farm, but it's going to be open on two sides. So they'll have a shaded area where they can sit and enjoy the view of the farmhouse and the Spears Pond, which is associated with it now. And yada, yada. We found, so after I realized, we have this thing and it was built in 1700, I approached my boss and said, would it be okay if I came in on a Saturday morning and brought my metal detector? Because a few years ago, my kids decided I was old and they got me a metal detector for my birthday. Now, we do love the beach, so there was a little bit more of a connection there. So, a few times I went up and down the beach. I found a couple of rusty nails, bottle tops, and yeah, this is great fun. So then I said, wait a minute, I should go to the ruin with so he said, yeah, come on in, have fun. So I spoke to the committee to let them know I'm gonna be digging some holes, hopefully. So I came in on a Saturday morning and 20 minutes into it, I said to myself, what am I doing? Come on. And literally as I was thinking that, message came down from upstairs, beep, beep, beep. I found 20-something artifacts, metal artifacts that day. Fast forward to literally 2 weeks ago, we're at 462 artifacts from around the ruin. About 200 of them are metal artifacts, and the balance, the majority, are ceramic, glass, wood. Only one piece of wood, honestly, but also several animal bones. We have a pig jaw, we have a cow jaw, and we have another piece of a pig. I forget what it is, but a lot of this stuff, our residents got together, formed an archaeological group. They did a formal dig around the ruins last year, and that's where we uncovered a ton of artifacts. And just 2 weeks ago, one of our residents on the Nature Conservancy Committee was working to clear some invasives around one of the trees, and a large piece of metal that quite frankly looked like an artillery shell just became unearthed. So she brought it to the office, said, Roy, I don't know what this is. I knew it wasn't an artillery shell, but I really had no idea what it was. I noticed there was 2 little indentations on either side. So after I cleaned it, dug out the things, I said, okay, I put it on Facebook, hey, what is this antique? And somebody came back to me immediately. And I think she wanted to say at the end, you dope, because she said, it's a cotter pin. And I could read the sarcasm. And what we understood it to be is, now remember, I'm from the Bronx, okay? The cotter pin that would hold the horse to the cart. That's what it is. It's a cotter pin for that. So that was really amazing. And we have a bunch of other artifacts, and some of them you could see here. That big one is an axle end for the horse-drawn cart. So we have the original record of the ox shed. We have ox shed parts or ox cart parts, and it all kind of fills in the story. So that, I think I've kept you guys longer than I was supposed to, some pictures, and, I have to go back. We did find a coin. Yeah, that was the highlight for me because, as a metal detector, you want to find a coin. We found an 1833 buck silver $50. And we brought it to a numismatist, I think I said it right, and he actually identified it as that, which was really awesome because, we were looking at it and we were like, this has got to be a coin. I will shut up soon. Interestingly, there's a record of a fire having taken place in the house at one point. This coin was in a fire. So again, it kind of really brought the whole thing together for us. All the artifacts are clean. We chemically treat the metal for not for preserve them. That's the right word. So the rust won't continue to eat them away. And everything is cataloged. And that's all I have for today. Sorry if I ran a little longer than I was supposed to. Thank you very much. I can't tell you how enjoyable this was. Because of you guys, your interest, and I said I would shut up.
Roy, I think you did a great job today. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned about the community that all these people live in. Some of you live in, who are here. And that's one of the things we need to remember is that we have communities and things happened before we were here. And we need to look at some of what that's all about and what the ecology of all of it is too. And stay tuned for the fall because I'm doing a whole thing on Lenape people. So I'm gonna be talking to him further because I know about Harlan and some of those things and fabulous information. Thank you so much. Really, really great. And what you're doing for Crossing. Can I ask you to pray us out?
Sure.
Great.
Did anyone have any quick questions before we close for Roy? Or
Where is the Big Woods? I mean, we probably drive by it all the time.
Yeah,
No, it's
it's, our property is between Route 1 South and 926 Parkersville Road.
Yeah.
And 52.
Yeah.
We're in there and the Big Woods sit kind of in the middle of that. So Kendall at Longwood is right off of Route 1, Crosslands is right off of 926. So in the middle of that are the Big Woods with the walking
I was
trails.
just curious.
And can anybody come and walk the trails?
Yeah, absolutely. The trails are open. And if you come into Kendall and park in one of the lots, really you could call us to find out exactly where trailheads are. But right on what we call Kendall Drive, which is the main road, there's a couple of trailheads. And we can provide you with trail maps as well, which would be helpful. They tell me, I'm sorry, here we go. They tell me you can't get lost on the woods, in our woods. I can do streets, but you know, so I take my radio, I take my phone, I take one of my employees. I'm not getting lost.
Are dogs welcomed?
Bill's got a question.
On your trails, are dogs welcomed?
Dogs.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
We do ask that, any pets on the property are on a leash.
And we have a dog park.
We do. Our residents have a dog park. Right now, it's a little bit smaller because we have a $56 million health center expansion project that just kicked off earlier last month. So the original dog park had to be moved to another location and it's only temporary right now, but it will be coming back at the end of the project.
Great.
Okay, let's close with prayer. Will you join me in prayer? Holy God, we thank you for the sacred spaces that we enjoy every day. And we do recognize that we are on Lenape land. Thank you for Roy, for his insights, for his humor, for his experience that he shared with us today. We can look to the past and learn so much, and we know that we ask you to open our eyes towards the future, that we might be the good stewards that you call us to be. Help us to be creative and imaginative in the ways that we intersect with nature, with your creation, with one another. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay.